This topic will be broken down into 3 parts using 3 videos. The first video will be a general overview of creative thinking and problem solving, and the other 2 videos will be a detailed application of the different problem solving techniques that you will need to know, as well as the impact of those techniques on the business. So, let's get started with today's lesson on creative thinking and problem solving. Let's see what you need to know once all the work has been completed in this section. By the time we complete this section of work, you will need to know the following. You will need to know the difference between decision making and problem solving. You will need to be able to explain all 8 steps of the problem solving cycle. You need to explain the benefits that creative thinking has in the workplace. You need to be able to explain how you will develop the different creative thinking skills. You need to explain the barriers to creative thinking, and you will need to be able to explain all the problem solving techniques. That's the application and implementation of each of the problem solving techniques, as well as the impact of each of the problem solving techniques. Explaining the difference between decision making and problem solving is a very common question that's often asked. You are often asked to tabulate the differences between problem solving and decision making. If you are asked to tabulate the answer, then the answer must always be in a tabular format. However, if you are not asked to tabulate the answer, you will still need to have 2 headings, one for decision making and one for problem solving. So, my suggestion to you is to use a table format anyway when answering the question of what is the difference between decision making and problem solving. I've created a table that I will use to explain the difference between decision making and problem solving. You can learn this table as is, or as you will see it now. So, let's see what the difference is between decision making and problem solving. When distinguishing between decision making and problem solving, it is important to note the following. Decision making is an action, whereas problem solving is a process. I'll repeat that. Decision making is an action and problem solving is a process. So with decision making, decisions are usually made by a person that is on management, and based on the fact that they are on management, their position as a manager gives them the authority to make a decision. Whereas with problem solving, problems can be solved by any member of the group or any member of a team, or even by an individual in the team. So anyone can be involved in problem solving, but with decision making, the decision is usually made by a manager. With decision making, before we choose the best option, we identify all the various alternatives that have been considered. Problem solving is the creation of all the different solutions or alternatives that we might apply to solve problems. We normally critically evaluate them to see which solution is possibly the best for the business to use. So basically the difference between decision making and problem solving is the following. Decision making is choosing the best option, that's the action, and problem solving is finding what the best solution is, and that's a process that takes place over a period of time. I hope that it is clear that decision making takes place at a specific point in time and problem solving takes place over a period of time. That is why we say decision making is an action and problem solving is a process. The problem solving cycle is also a very common question that's asked. Learners are often asked to explain each of the steps of the problem solving cycle. Marks are usually allocated so that each step is awarded 3 marks. 2 marks for naming the step and 1 mark for explaining the step. So if you are asked to explain the specific steps, then each explanation will be worth 2 marks. So look at the mark allocation as a guide to see how many of the steps you need to answer. Also look at the question. It will normally say explain all 8 steps or 6 steps or 5 steps or so on. But have a look at the mark allocation to see what your guide will be. If they do not give you this name of the step, you will get 2 marks for mentioning the name of the step and 1 mark for the explanation. If they tell you which specific step to explain, then you will get 2 marks for each of the explanations. So let's have a look at the problem solving cycle to remind ourselves how each of the steps work. The problem solving cycle is made up of the following steps. Step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, define the problem. Step 3, identify possible solutions. Step 4, select the most appropriate solution. Step 5, develop an action plan. Step 6, implement that action plan. Step 7, monitor the implementation of the plan. And finally, step 8, evaluate the implemented solution. Let's have a look at each of these steps in a bit more detail. In step 1, identifying the problem, we firstly have to acknowledge that there is a problem. And once we acknowledge that there is a problem, we have to actually determine what the problem is. Then in step 2, we have to define the problem. So we have to identify what has caused the problem. So in this process, we gather up as much information as possible regarding the problem to identify what has caused the problem. So we're basically determining the nature of what the problem is. Step 3 involves identifying alternative solutions. In this step, we're going to identify as many possible solutions as we can. We obviously, when problem solving, can't just come up with one solution and implement it. We want to find out what are all the different possible solutions that we could implement, because that will help us decide on what course of action we are going to take in solving the problem. Once we've identified all the possible solutions from step 3, step 4 requires us to evaluate each of these solutions or each of these possible solutions. In this process, we look at each of the different solutions critically and evaluate each of them very critically to try and identify all the advantages and disadvantages of each of the different solutions. This will help us in our decision-making process. It will also help us refine the possible solutions that we want to implement. After evaluating all the possible solutions and refining them a bit more, we now have to choose the best solution. In this process, we develop a set of criteria that helps us to determine the best solution. This criteria could include things like the time it takes to implement the desired action plan, the cost, the risk involved, etc. And we use this to identify which is the most appropriate solution at that point in time. So we try and match the best solution to the resources of the business, to the size of the business, and to the success rate that potential solution might have for the business. Once we have chosen the best solution, we move on to step 6, which is formulating or developing an action plan. This action plan will define how we are going to implement the best solution that we have chosen. It will help us to arrange the necessary resources of the business. It will help us to delegate the various tasks that need to be done. It will help us to establish a timeline for the implementation of the different aspects of the solution, and also set deadlines, and will allow us to create a way to monitor whether the action plan is successful or whether we need to make adjustments and so on. Step 7 of the problem solving cycle requires us now to implement the action plan. So in this process, we carry out all the planned actions to the solution that we have chosen. We communicate all the delegated tasks, we set all the deadlines, we inform employers of all the deadlines, we allocate all the resources according to the plan that we have identified. And then finally, step 8 is evaluating the solution or the action plan. This process can obviously only take place after we've implemented the action plan and after some time has passed. So here we actually are determining whether we have solved the problem or not. Sometimes we solve the problem completely, sometimes we solve the problem partially. So in this process, we're going to identify what we need to do. Are we going to continue with the action plan that we have identified? Are we going to adapt it slightly? Or in the worst case scenario where the problem wasn't solved at all, we need to cancel that plan that we have devised and start the process all over again by looking at the problem again and going through each of the various steps again. So Remember to read the questions carefully and to use the mark allocation as your guide when answering questions on the problem-solving cycle. This will help you with your time management within the examinations or test as well. It is not always easy to be creative all the time. Everyone is not equally creative. So therefore it is important that the workplace ensures that they develop the skills of people to develop their creative thinking. After all, we can put systems in place to develop our creative thinking, and we need to continuously work on these skills in order to develop our creative thinking. So let's have a look at some of the recommendations as to how we can develop our own creative thinking skills, because this will serve us well in our future. The first suggestion in developing creative thinking skills is looking at problems but trying to identify opportunities. When you look at problems and try to see opportunities, relates to an attitude that you have. Are you going to look at problems and let those problems get you down or prevent you from achieving a goal? Or are you going to view those problems as an opportunity to try something different, to use a different approach to achieving your goals? So you can practice developing this attitude of viewing problems as an opportunity for something different. The second recommendation is to be open-minded to various opinions and not to be judgmental. So here you need to try and acknowledge different views or different opinions from other people, other co-workers, other pieces of sources of information, etc. So don't be set on doing things your way. It might prevent you from being creative. Listen to others' opinions or their experiences, as this could lead to creative opportunities. When you listen to other people's experiences or other people's viewpoints, they might provide you with some information that you can add to what you already know. And in that process, you could develop creative thinking and come up with strategies that could give you a competitive advantage in the business. The third suggestion is to try to always apply new solutions to old existing problems. The reason why old existing problems keep on reoccurring is because you've always applied solutions that don't work. There is actually no point in reapplying old solutions if the problem is going to reoccur all the time, because the problem will never go away. So if a solution has proven not to be successful, get rid of it or adapt it, but change it and come up with new ways of adapting or developing new solutions to your old existing problems. The fourth recommendation is to expand your knowledge within your field, because if you expand your knowledge within your field, you are going to be able to find or to stay up to date with all the new developments in your field, and this will allow you to develop new and creative strategies. If you don't expand your knowledge, you're going to keep on doing things the way that you are currently doing it. You're never going to adapt to the new ways of doing things within your field. And that might lead to a situation where you're going to keep on applying old solutions to existing problems. So by expanding your knowledge, you can actually apply new solutions to your existing problems. And then the final recommendation is to identify your inspiration and use that in your problem solving process. So if you think about something that inspires you or something that you enjoy doing, when you are doing that, your state of mind is a state where you are relaxed, you are comfortable, and in that state you are your most creative. So for example, if you are passionate about jogging or hiking and you have a problem that you need to address, then go for a run or go for a hike. And when you are doing that, try to think about your problem, because in that process where you are relaxed and you are comfortable, you're going to come up with a creative solution to your problem. It is important that a business creates an environment that is conducive to creative thinking. Some businesses have recreation areas with pool tables, foosball tables, gyms, table tennis, etc. This allows the employees to relax and recuperate while they are at work. This will increase their productivity and their creativity, and after all, a happy worker is a productive worker. This creativity will hold many benefits for the business. Let's have a look and see what some of these benefits are. Creative thinking will result in unique or better ideas or solutions. These unique or better ideas or solutions may result in a competitive advantage for the business. It's important to remember what a competitive advantage is. Remember that a competitive advantage is an advantage that your business has over another business. It is something that your business has that another business does not have. It's a strength, something that will attract customers to your business instead of them purchasing from another business. With creative thinking, complicated business problems may be solved. Productivity will increase, and we all know when productivity increases, higher profits will be the result. Managers or employees are more confident when they are creative, which means they can perform their duties to their full potential. Managers or employees will keep up to date with all the trends in their industry. We've spoken about it previously, where we said that one of the skills in developing your creativity is keeping up with the latest trends, keeping up with the knowledge within your field. So because managers are keeping up with the trends and the knowledge within their field, they will be up to date with all the trends and all the changes, which means they can make better decisions. Managers will also become better leaders because they are able to handle changes creatively and confidently. Unfortunately, human beings cannot be creative all the time. There are many factors that contribute to the lack of creativity. It is important to know what these barriers are so that we can identify them and overcome them. Let's explore some of these barriers that prevent us from being creative. The first barrier to creative thinking is the belief that you cannot be creative. The mind is a very powerful tool which can be trained. When you believe that you cannot do something, then you will not even try it. If you train your brain to believe that you're not creative, then you will not be creative. You will not even try to be creative. So we need to make sure that we are not of the belief that we are not creative. We need to in fact believe that we are creative, because then we will train our mind to believe that we are creative. The next barrier to creative thinking is trying to be too practical in finding logical solutions. When we are too practical or too logical, this will result in routine thinking. And routine thinking will result in us applying the same old solutions to new and existing problems, which means the same problems are going to keep on recurring. So we should not try to be too practical or to think too logically. We should try something different or something new. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the same old problems all the time. Following the rules too strictly will also lead to routine thinking, and it's this routine thinking that we don't want. We are not saying that you should not follow the rules, because rules are there for a reason and rules provide structure, but sometimes we should just look within the rules and see where we can do something creative while still applying the rules or not breaking the rules, but we shouldn't always follow the rules too strictly. The last two barriers to creative thinking, believing that being wrong is bad and being afraid to make mistakes, will result in people not trying something new and not trying to be creative. Some people in the workplace will not change their routines because they don't want to be wrong or they don't want to make mistakes. They fear that being wrong and making mistakes will make them look incompetent. And the last thing we want to be in the workplace is incompetent. So they continue with the routine thinking and doing things in the same way, and once again, all the old problems keep on reoccurring. We actually want to try something new, and we should not fear failure because it's from our failure that we will learn new things and we will become more creative and we will adapt to the changing environments within the workplace. These are only some of the barriers to creative thinking. There are many other factors that can affect our creativity. Things like financial stress, things like family stress, illness, and so on. Whatever the barrier is, we need to try and identify it and overcome the barrier so that we can once again be creative. In our next lesson, we will look at the following problem-solving techniques. We will not just look at the application of each of the techniques, but we will look at the impact that each of these techniques has on the business. This is the list of problem-solving techniques that we will look at in lesson 2 of problem-solving and creative thinking. We will look at each technique in detail. I will use an example to show you how each technique is applied, and I will explain to you the impact of each of the techniques on the business. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Till next time, stay safe.